Welcome, everybody. We're officially recording again. I missed all that good stuff. We are today going to focus on organizing your lesson, and in particular with Google Slides, but a lot of people out there are using PowerPoint, and most of the things that we'll be doing can also be done in PowerPoint. There may be one or two things that we've noticed where you can't, but we'll let you know if we run into any of those.
Mm-hmm. And today it's all about the organizing, because we as teachers typically have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so this is this is more what my house looks like for my lessons. Just piles and piles of stuff that a lot of us have piles. And I do have, even back on campus, I have stacks of stuff like this on my desk. I have articles and papers and books that I've ordered and all kinds of stuff that I need to get organized. But then
I always think of my former colleague, and she had a double-decker or two-tiered cart that she would push back and forth from her class to her office.
She retired a few years ago.
It contained all of her teaching supplies and materials that she would take back and forth. And I sometimes feel like that. I get so excited to teach the next topic that I start accumulating all this stuff, and then I never get it quite put back in the file cabinet or the file drawer. So by the end of the semester, I've just got mountains and mountains of stuff for teaching my content. Well, today the focus is organization, and it really does apply to all modalities, because once we get this content organized, it's easier to teach in any modality. And we've recently experienced how last minute you can be thinking you're in one modality and get switched to another when most of us rapidly went to online. So the nice thing about having it organized in slides is it makes it easy to make those transitions to different modalities.
So we have a task for you guys, I think. What we would like you to do, and Jen has found a 2-minute timer. We always do our 5-minute countdown. So we are going to have you guys say that you're going to explain to somebody else how to organize their course. So create a list. The title of your list is Organizing Your Content in 3 Easy Steps. So you can do that on paper in front of you. We'll ask you to share out when you're finished, but I'm going to hit the 2-minute timer and go.
Imagine it's a brand new teacher. You're going to tell them how to organize your content in 3 easy steps.
Typically, when I have my students do anything on a timer, I give them a halfway mark, so you're 1 minute down and 1 minute to go.
It's hard to put it in 3 steps.
I know, I feel like we cheated because we kind of have my plan on another slide, and it's 4 steps with sub-bullets. So you guys have a harder job than I did. And we'll wrap this up in about 10 more seconds.
Okay. We would love it if you would share one idea from your list. The first one, what's the first step in the chat? So if you haven't yet, enable the chat so you can see the comments there, and share number 1 from your list.
Oh, awesome. We got Kathy's whole list here. What's the content you want to cover? What do you want them to know? The overall goal. So it seems like people are pretty much on the same page. That number 1 step is, what's the end goal? What's the learning objective?
It is really easy when you are a subject matter expert and you love your content and it's all intriguing and interesting to you, to just go down rabbit holes. I think Mary and I do that all the time. Oh, look, we can do this, we can do this. And so really,
we're like a little yappy dog.
Having that goal front and center really helps you eliminate some of the extra and keep focused on the content. So I love that is the first one.
So what we want to do today
is talk about taking all of that content and putting it into Google Slides, so it literally is easily accessible to you and at your fingertips. The beautiful thing about slides, and we're not getting paid by Google Slides, we've just found it to be a really effective method to have everything at your fingertips. So we're going to show you some of the how-tos and talk to you about some of the whys.
And you can see buried in here, because we just kind of took all the components of one of Jen's lesson plans. Well, I shouldn't say lesson plans, but a lesson. And buried in here, we just mixed it all up and threw it on the slide, is learning objectives, which you guys said. What do you want the students to know? That's what you guys said. So that stuff is in here, and it's just a question of sort of formulating everything around it.
When we went through our why we would use Google Slides, we came up with a list of about 20 reasons that we like it. And we pared it down to come up with like just 4 really big ideas. One is that it's all inclusive. 2 is once you get that content organized, it can be a huge time saver. 3 is it's very interactive. And 4, it is completely customizable.
That appeals to the creative part of me.
We'll dive a little bit deeper in the first 2. The first one is Google Slides is so inclusive. Think of it as that all expense paid vacation, in that everything is there. You're not going to be adding a lot of things to the package. So it can act as a container for your lesson. You can put almost everything in that Google Slide and repurpose it and repackage it.
Yeah, which is nice for students. You know, when they don't have to keep going out to other sources and going and coming back, then that makes life a lot less confusing for them.
And the second big idea is it can be a huge time saver. Once you have that content organized, you're not looking for it all over. It can live within Canvas and it's at your fingertips. And say you are into topic week 7, one topic, and you find a great resource for the topic you did in week 2, you can go back and throw that at the end of the slide. So it really does help you keep everything in one place. Also, when it's time to switch modalities, some of us might be going back to the physical classroom and teaching hybrid in the fall. You've got all that content at your fingertips, whether you're teaching online, live online, or actually in the classroom. And the biggest selling point for me is it's cloud-based. Sometimes I'm on the computer in the classroom, sometimes I'm on our desktop, or I'm on a laptop, or on an iPad. Because it's cloud-based, it's dynamic, and I'm always getting the most current version, and I can access it literally anywhere. Even if you're traveling, you can have a version of it that is static and you can work on it and it updates when you have access again.
I know some instructors always end up having the classes be all different preps, but we only ever offer 2 classes in econ. So I always have multiple sections of each of those 2 preps. And if I find a mistake and I update my document and that's on my desktop and it's not a Google thing, I end up re-uploading it to each one of my classes, which is, it's a pain.
The interactivity, because it's in the cloud and it's always the most current version, is probably what sold me on it for Canvas. So if I upload my Google Slides to Canvas once, anytime I change the Google slide, it automatically changes it in Canvas as well. So I'm not taking down that old PowerPoint and revising it and uploading the new one. The other big thing is it's so easy to reshape content and move content around. I might think I'm going to get through a particular topic in a specific lesson, and I don't quite make it to the end. I can just pull those slides onto the next one and start there. I also love it for review. So there's just so many features. So let's talk about the what. If we break it into 2 big chunks, we're really talking about the instructional content and the instructional activities. So I want you to think for a minute, and you guys can just unmute and respond verbally. Where does your instructional content come from? Or how do you supplement it? What do you use to supplement it? Anyone want to share? Or you can put it in the chat. Where does your instructional content come from? Is most of it from a textbook, or where are you getting your content from? Yeah.
So I think most of mine usually comes from department. As an adjunct, I'm usually told what I need to cover and given some of the content or supplies or materials for it, but then I always supplement it. But the original skeleton structure of it generally comes from powers that be.
Yeah, and there's some places that your curriculum, your content, everything is what I call canned. And so you get the course, you inherit the course, and you can't change or tweak anything. Others, they say, here's the competencies. Now figure out how you're going to pull that content to teach them. So we have a huge variety. Some faculty have to build every piece of content that they're using to teach the competencies. Others have a lot of that they get from reads. Any other people willing to share? Where does your content come from?
One in the chat says we create it from the teaching standards, or content is provided for us. Econ, maybe we've always had a lot of autonomy because the different instructors teach so differently. So as you say, we go to the competencies and we definitely have to meet those district competencies. But as long as we do that, we have some freedom around that as to what we can create. Like with my content, I've built it myself. I built my own videos and I built my own books, although I do pull a lot of articles and things like that.
Yeah, it can be a lot to create all the content, especially from scratch, or even to curate it or pull it together. So what tools do you use to supplement it, or what do you use to supplement your content? If you're pulling from a textbook or you've got some content from a lead, what do you use to supplement it? Publisher information?
Publisher information plus everything else I can put in. I know a lot of people use TED videos, so TED Talk.
The other thing is some content is pretty static and some is pretty dynamic. It just depends on what you're teaching. Every time I go to teach a new topic, I do some current research. I was teaching on dyslexia not too long ago, and I found out there's a new Senate bill that is going to impact this and how services are provided. So before I teach a content area, I'm always looking for what is new, what's current, and then also what's old and what should I maybe take out. So if we look at these two big ideas, we're looking at instructional content. And this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but we're talking about videos, links, whatever text or verbiage or storyline you're creating, the images you're sharing, or data and charts. So that's all the content.
But then you have the activities side too. And we kind of looked at this, or asked everybody to look at it back in Basecamp, sort of engagement piece. So you can be looking at individual activities. You can be looking at small group activities. You can be looking at whole group activities. And today we're sort of focusing on the stuff that happens within the lesson as opposed to without the lesson, but it can take place in either one.
So hopefully, whether you're teaching live online or whether students are in your course asynchronously, there's some kind of lesson, and we have to think really carefully about what do we want the students to be doing while they're learning that content or going through that content. Are they sketchnoting, or are they filling out guided notes, or are they just note-taking or making note cards? Are they problem solving? Thinking through that in every piece of the lesson is really important, and we can also put that content in slides.
Okay, the instructional content piece, when we were asking, some of you were saying, well, our department hands us the instructional content, and some of you said we go digging for it, and some said it's some of both. We get it handed to us and we go and supplement it with other things. But the beauty of Google Slides, we talked as a container for your content, right? Well, for your content and your activities, but you can embed the videos within the slides, like the countdown timers that we have used. We used two of them so far today, one as the waiting room to count down to class and one as an activity timer. But you could have instructional videos in there, screencasts that you created, you can store in your own YouTube account or on Google Drive. Any of those, it's really easy by just getting the URL, the web address for it, and saying insert video, drop in the URL, and up comes the video. And that's it. Creating links to websites or articles, or even, this was one of the ones you showed me, within slides, you can link to another slide in the presentation. So you can allow the students to jump back and forth between slides. Is also really easy. You just highlight it, insert link, and there you go. Jen showed me this one. Being a big fan of fonts, being a fan of how it looks. One of the things I gripe about is, well, the fonts are really limited. I can't make slides look as good as I can in Word. And she said, I just saw this. If you go to the help window in slides and enter get fonts, it just pops you to a whole list of fonts, and all you have to do is click on them and it adds them to the fonts that are available to you inside slides. Embedding images, also really easy. You can either take images from your own collection, or you can conduct a search, kind of like you do in Canvas, where you can search for an image. You can search from Creative Commons licensed images within your Google Slides and not have to worry about the problem of copyright infringement. Okay, and then data was the one that you said you hadn't known about. If you say, like Kathy, you're doing accounting, if you were using Google Sheets instead of using Excel, you can create a chart and put that chart inside of your Google slide. And every time you update your Google Sheet, your spreadsheet with the data, it'll also update the chart that's inside of your Google slide, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right, so it's so dynamic. Next, we like to kind of think of the instructional activities in layers. I know anytime that we're presenting live online, we think, what's specifically in the slides? And that is for any modality, whether you're teaching live online or whether students are going through that content asynchronously in your online course. So everything that you put in the slides is one layer. You want all of the reflective questions there. This will help the flow of the lesson and help you think, oh, this is a good spot to chunk and maybe add a polling question, scenarios, case studies, problems to solve. You can even use Jamboards. We've got a session on that, how if you want to solve some problems real time or have students solve problems real time, you can just add a Jamboard page. And also learning stations you can put that content on your slides, specifically the directions and the activities students are supposed to do. So once they go to breakout rooms, they actually know what they're supposed to be doing. So we've got that layer of Google Slides, but then we also want you to think about the layer of WebEx and how students can respond. There's so many different ways to keep them engaged and responding to your Google Slides throughout the lesson, either through emojis, or hand raising in the chat. They can respond, the verbal responses, the link to forms, and even in those breakout rooms. So we've got a couple layers going on there. And if you launch those lessons asynchronously, you can use the same lesson and add some add-ons like either Pear Deck or Nearpod, and have all of those questions throughout answered in that platform, and you can go back and see them. It is a really interactive way to do both live online and online lessons. It ensures that engagement as students are going throughout.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you guys, organizing the content for this session was a challenge today because there's so much to talk about. If we're skimming past some things, then don't forget to ask us about it later. And if you want to know more about it, but there are some of these, like the Pear Deck. We have an LOL session from last fall that shows you exactly how to use Pear Deck with your slides. There's one on Jamboard. There's one on breakout sessions, and we'll be doing another one on breakout sessions soon. So some of this stuff is already sort of in the archive if you want to learn more about it.
So let's get to the how-to, and there really is no single correct method or just one way to do it. As a matter of fact, Mary and I do it very differently. But like you said, we start with our objectives, and everything builds on that objective. Everything we're doing should be guiding students down that path to mastering the objectives. But we start with those two big pieces that we just covered, the instructional content and the instructional activities.
Okay, do you want to start? You want to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
If you look with our plan, we both start with the objectives.
As you guys did.
Just like you did. And I pull all that content together and I put that content on the slides. I sort it into big ideas. And then I organize it into manageable or bite-sized chunks. We've been talking to you a long time right now. Your attention is probably waned. How do we bring you back into the conversation and chunk it up so you can participate as well? And then design the instructional activities and formative assessment. The last thing I do is go back and create that waiting room and resource slides, the very beginning and the end.
And you can see that my order is out of order from Jen's, that I don't do the building until the very end. That what I start with is basically a storyboard. That I look at each of my lessons as a story that I'm telling my students. It's got a beginning, and a middle, and an end. And I actually think in terms of, okay, the end is that they have reached the learning objective. So how's my beginning to introduce that? And then I fill in the middle piece. So once I've decided what the overall objective is, how I'm going to start, how I'm going to finish, then I can think about the middle, what's the path look like to get from A to B. So that's when I'll say, well, what are the tools I want to use today? You know what would work really well for that would be Poll Everywhere. Hey, that embeds inside slides. I design my instructional activities and then I build it and look for the details and look for the images in the videos and fill out the text. But I probably, like I say, start with a basic storyboard. If I were building a storyboard in slides, I could just put a few words on each slide and say, okay, here's this step of the story, here's this step of the story, here's this step of the story. Mm-hmm. Okay, so our planning process logistically is different, and also practical sense, I think, is different.
Both of us still pen and paper out a lesson as we go, and you can see mine follows that format of like, what are the big ideas, what are the big 3 huge pieces of information that I want to cover, and then how do I do that, how do I chunk it up, and I just kind of graft it out.
Right, and I said that mine always starts with what's the story you're going to tell and what do the bones look like. So here was my intro to economics, and the bones are, let me give them the goals and then give them some videos that teach them and then let them practice. And then, so this is the basic underlying structure of what I'm going to do. And then I assess the tools. This particular example is what was I going to use inside Canvas to support each of these things, but I can do the same thing inside slides.
The next one is how once I scratch it out on paper, I have to have it in a little bit of form. So I start with, obviously, with the objectives, and I link the MCCD course competency bank there because I just always want to have it accessible rather than having to look at my syllabus. And then the Bloom's Rule, if I'm really struggling with that objective. And on this one, this is where I linked the Bloom's Will. There is actually slide 27. You can link within slides, and it will take you to that. We can show you that at the end.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'll get lost. I'll end up at the end and not come back.
So I start there, and then the instructional content, the instructional activities, and then I go up and build my waiting room or that anticipatory set, all the announcements, the things that I want to remind students about throughout the week. I try and do college reminders as well, as far as, when should they be registering and all of those kinds of things, seeking advisement. And then there's a copy of my waiting room menu checklist. I don't do everything all the time, but it's just some of the options that I do. And we've done a couple sessions where we include how to do waiting rooms or things to do in waiting rooms. But that's just a little checklist of reminders or examples or sketching out what you need to do in that waiting room if you're using Pear Deck, things like that.
Just the convocation 2 weeks ago, right? We did quite a bit in that convocation video. If you go back and watch it, the survival tips talks a lot about waiting rooms and what we mean by waiting rooms. If you missed that, you can go back and look at it.
And you might recognize this is some of the content that was in that jumbled
pile.
mess.
Yeah.
When I pulled it out and chunked it up, these were some of the resources that I would share with students. So this is just one piece of that jumbled mess, but I pulled out some of the resources. This was a particular topic I was talking about, dyslexia for students, and I kind of organized them. This would be something, having all those resources there and accessible, I could, if I had a little bit of extra time, share some of them. If I didn't have enough time, I could say to students when I put this in Canvas, go back and check out 3 of the resources. Once this information is in Canvas and everything is linked, you can see there's videos there linked, there's a game, some apps, a children's book, a read aloud children's book, some actual accommodation strategies for dyslexia, some teacher resources. Once they're all linked, students have access to them, and that can actually even be an assignment or an activity that they do something with, is go in and investigate some of these extra options. So it's great for you, and it's great for students to have access as well. Once I have this content on a slide, it was super easy to then just flip it over to a Google Doc, and that handout for students at the top is a hyperlink to a forced copy where students will just make their own copy of all of these resources. And I've got a little annotated bibliography of what's inside each. So just having it in that Google format makes it easy to reshape or resize in multiple ways.
Since you mentioned not losing people in their attention span, we have a question.
So we want to know, we've created, rather than spending the time today doing a lot of how to do this or how to do that, I made 5 or 6 how-to videos to do some of the specific things, how to start some Google Slides, how to embed images and video, and those are to come. But we want to know, what do you want to learn about organizing the slides? Or is there a tip that you've learned or mastered? Or is there something you would incorporate or try? So we're just going to ask if you would unmute in the mic, and we can capture some of those ideas here. Mary and I have both been attending some of the sessions where people are having cafe and conversation, and we're saying there's just not enough conversation going on about good teaching. So we basically like to pause and say, share with us, what are some things that you're doing, or some ideas you have, or things that's working, or questions you have?
I figured that if you guys actually took time out of your afternoon to jump in here, then there was something specific you probably wanted to know about using slides. So let us know so we can make sure we hit those highlights. Kathy!
How do you share with your students? Then putting a link in Canvas.
So synchronously or asynchronously? Because, right now, of course, we're sharing our slides with you guys. And then at the end today, we'll have a link for each of you to get your own copy of our slides. So you can do it within WebEx.
Okay, and then how do you do it in WebEx is, I guess, the question.
To show you how to do that, do you want to jump to that slide?
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
When you're sharing, you want to think about a couple of things. And I kind of want to frame up sharing for just a moment. When Mary and I start a new slide and we share together, we want to be editing it. She can be at her house and I'm in mine, and we're editing together and we're creating, we're sharing. But when I share with students, that is not the link I want to share with them, because I do not want them
Right.
messing up your original.
messing up any of the original content. So what I actually do is I embed it in Canvas so they can access it in Canvas and see it in Canvas. And I did a video
I was just showing a link piece
of how to actually put it in Canvas, and then they can go through all of the content and view it and interact and click on the links and the videos, but they can't change it or manipulate it. So I put mine in Canvas for viewing. That's one way if you want them to view. If you actually want them to have a copy, you can make what's called a forced copy, and there's a video on how to do that as well.
So every week when we do one of the LOL sessions, I try to make a shortened link. I use Bitly as a tool to do that, so I don't have to put a big long Google link in there. But that is the link that will have students get their own copy. And there is a magical way to do that, which Jen has shared with you. Let me go back into present mode for just a moment so you can see this a little better.
Google calls it a forced copy, and I like to think of a forced copy as if I was making handouts and walking into class and giving every student their own copy. You can also use it for worksheets. So say you do a forced copy and students have this template, they can fill in the study guide and then re-upload it as an assignment. But that's called a forced copy. So when you click on it, it's going to force you to make a copy. So you can't change the original, but you can do whatever you want to your copy. So students could fill in a study guide or a learning guide or take notes and then resubmit that, and each student would have their own personal version of their notes.
I actually went to the first slide that Jen had included that had some of her videos just to go through it, and then I'll show you the video she's talking about. So she has this series and you'll be able to tell easily what they are. The first video is creating a new slide. So this is if you're brand new newbie, the people who gave me thumbs down on having used slides before. Here's how to create a new slide. Here's how to pick a theme, add pages, and add text. Then adding images, links, and videos. So getting a little higher in terms of adding media instead of just text.
And the thing about this too is if you create how-to videos for your students, like how to complete an assignment, one long how-to might be difficult. You have different students that are starting at different places. Like some of you might need the first video and then watch all three.
I realized when I clicked, it didn't take me to the next slide. Did you notice this first video started playing? I thought I had caught all of these. Let me get out of here. When you put videos in here, and I clicked on Jen's embedded video, and I'm going to right click, go to format options, because right now the setting on it says play on click. So when I clicked in my presentation, it automatically played that video. In some circumstances, I would want that to happen. In other circumstances, like now, I would rather have it on manual and only play when I choose to play it. So I just changed it from play on click to play manual. So stuff like that, you have some control over on the back end. Sorry. Squirrel went off on a tangent.
That's good. What I wanted to share is when you build small chunked little directions, students can scaffold in or go in and pick exactly the piece that, hey, I can skip that first one because I already know how to do that, but I maybe need to know how to do slide 2. Or I can skip 1 and 2 and go straight to 3. Or I know how to do all of those. So it really provides that extra support that some students need. And it also gives those that are more advanced the opportunity to just kind of skip that. The next how-to is how to share in Google Slides. So the first one is if you're collaborating on the same slide. So I started a slide and I wanted to share it with Mary and all of you so we could all be collaborating at the same time. I show you how to allow them to be either just viewing it, commenting on it, and editing it. If you want, you can give them the option to edit it, but you can also limit that edit time frame. So I'm only going to allow Mary to edit this for 4 days, and then I want the slide in its final version. I worked on a team where we were creating some content for a course, so we would say, okay, we're all going to work on it and edit it, and sometimes I would get on at 10 o'clock at night and I could see the other two were working on it as well. That's the neat thing, is you can see people working in live time. But then there was a cutoff date where it's in its final version.
I think Jen's going to want to turn hers off when she wants me to go to sleep. Like, why are you up working on this at 2 a.m? You're cut off right now. This first one I can see is probably the most useful for people who are trying to look at small group collaboration. So that how-to video is going to be useful if you haven't thought about how to use slides for that. So Kathy, we showed you, because I wasn't sure which way you were talking about wanting to share your slides. So we did sort of a direct share. While we are showing you our slides, we also give all the students a forced copy within the chat. So here, Jen's video shows you how to get that forced copy link, because when you're in slides and you go and click share, it doesn't just automatically say, here's the link to get a forced copy. You have to do something a little tricky with it. So her demo shows you how to do that.
The other thing, if you're presenting live online and you do embed a video, go ahead, Mary, click play. You can go full screen. So if you have multiple videos, you can still go full screen if you're presenting live online. And you can unmute, or you can just watch the steps.
Do you want me to unmute? Okay. She doesn't enjoy listening to herself. That's true for most of us. But here she's showing you where to get the link and how to change the link to get it to be a forced copy. So you can easily follow her instructions and get that so that you can have your students.
And the last how-to is how to embed in Canvas. And I think this one is 3 minutes and 2 seconds. It really is easy to take your slides and embed them in Canvas. So I took this how-to video and put them in one of the Basecamp courses.
Okay, David's got a question.
Okay.
When students make a forced copy and it opens on their screen, where can they save it? Does it automatically go to their MEID drive?
It automatically goes to their Google Drive. So in the videos I've showed you too, so when you click in and create a new video, how to save it and where to save it. So I always tell my students, it'll say copy of study guide. I want you to change that copy word and replace it with your name. So Jennifer Peterson study guide, Sue Smith study guide, Mary McGlasson study guide. So then as they complete that study guide or learning guide, it's their own. And then when they upload it as an assignment, I can see that study guide and it's named appropriately. But I do a little video and show students how and where to save that. And when I show you how to create a new video, the first thing you do is create the new video. The second thing you do is give it a title. And the third thing is organize it. So that first slide has those 3 things. Create a new video, give it a name, and then organize it. I do the same video for my students to show them how to do that so they know how to organize. I suggest they have a folder for each course and just organize the content or move it right there as soon as they force the copy.
And Bartley's got a comment in the chat, says, I have followed Jen's video several times and it works wonderfully, very easy to follow. Thank you. And Bartley, yay! I don't know if you meant the one from Basecamp, but I think this is an updated version because they just changed something.
They changed the sharing settings, the default sharing settings in there. So if you ever run into problems, let us know. I think we got a couple emails on the CTLA just yesterday too. Yeah. So we will update those anytime they do the sharing settings. Usually you can figure it out as just one little glitch, but very helpful.
So this is David. Thank you for that description. I like the idea of the forced copy, either for a Google Doc or maybe for, slides. Because I've got students that need to turn in a screenshot and some commentary and maybe a fragment of something else. So by framing in a copy of basically the answer sheet and having them rename it for their own name seems like a pretty easy way they could upload just a single thing back into Canvas rather than having to click on 3 or 4 or 5 things to submit. They could do it all in one thing. Makes it easier for me because I've only got one thing to open and look at.
Yes, absolutely. If I'm doing a live online lesson, I will have a study guide for them that's a forced copy, or even if I'm teaching online, that Google slide deck is up there and they'll have a study guide to complete. It's called the close method. So there's a lot of great content on there, but they have to fill in key content or apply the content in some way or do a case study. They fill that out as they're watching the video. So it does feel like a class for them because they have to synchronously go through. Otherwise, you can put some great content videos in Canvas and students won't necessarily watch them. You have to have them do something with it. And if you create a template of what you want them to fill out or reflection questions and force a copy, It can be everything on one sheet.
Okay, and I'm going to interject for a moment here because it's a good illustration of this. Somebody just yesterday had asked about the forced copy question, and Juliet had made up an updated Google Doc. So I grabbed the URL and I dropped it in the chat, and you can see the first one says edit. Please don't use that one. Juliet will kill me if somebody goes in and screws up her document. The second one, I changed the ending so that it says copy. If you go to that, you'll get a forced copy of Juliet's document. Please.
Oops,
Please.
I just edited it for you anyway. Sorry. See, I think this is the challenge for us as rookies in using these tools. Right here, you've just pointed out that critical little glitch. And if I don't catch it or give them the right link,
Right.
they're going to edit the master copy,
Right.
and then I'm going to be starting over again. So I always feel like I come from a world where I think I've always got to squirrel away a safe copy someplace else,
Yes. Well, and
name
that's
something so
very
that I can
smart.
recover.
Right. Master copy. Well, and
Do you know what we do? Yeah. So there's a team of 3 of us that were creating OER content. So the topic
Angie
of the
says
week,
master. There you go.
and we would call it master. So it was the master dyslexia presentation. And we would all work on it throughout the week. We would get together on Sunday night and say, okay, here's the master. We all added our components. And from the master, there's Peterson's copy of the presentation. There's Powers and there's O'Brien. So we each have our own copy that we deploy in our Canvas site, because here's the cool thing. I was teaching online. My 2 colleagues, one was teaching live online and using that same exact slide twice a week, and another was teaching live online one night class. So we all 3 used that same slide deck to teach in 3 different modalities. We all contributed to it, but we all wanted our own individual copies to deploy in Canvas. And then if students were going to get a copy, I would make it a forced copy. So you really have to think of how those sharing options are used, so you don't end up. We had a whole department that put a template for every one of their adjuncts and their residential faculty for a specific course in there, and it was editable. So the first student in all of 40 classes that got in changed it for everyone. So those sharing options, they're pretty easy, but it's easy to mess it up too. So hopefully the videos will help.
Well, and I haven't tried the whole master slides thing, but it seems like that could be useful. I know that when we were doing base camp and we did that activity, everybody remembers the slide deck activity where we had you edit it, and it illustrated quite clearly some of the danger where if you have the whole class collaborating on something, one of them can change the background of every slide to be bright green or something like that. Well, we had people keep editing and deleting our sample slides. So I didn't know about master slides. I never used Google Slides until the beginning of the summer last summer. And I just was doing screenshots and making the slide a screenshot so they couldn't tamper with it. But you can actually make a master slide, right? Because you were
Right.
using that.
If you go into slides, so the template, the one slide that has blooms on there, I don't want anyone erasing it. So you can duplicate that. But it is what we call a master slide, so you can't remove the framework. It's all there. You can put text boxes over the top to fill in the blanks, but you can't change any of the underlying content. And you simply go to slides and master, and I'm kind of thinking of doing a workshop on that. Edit master, and you can create templates in your Google Slides that students can't change either. So I was thinking if I was going to do breakout rooms, I would give them each a templated slide that they couldn't change the content, they could just add to it.
Yeah, and I just thought that's probably the smart way to do it, because then you can share.
Why don't you go back to that slide, and Mary has editing access to the slides. See, you can click on
The Bloom's
the Bloom's
taxonomy.
wheel, but you can't change any of the, like the course topic date. You can't change any of those. So let me show you something else here too. Click on the handout for students.
Mhm.
So I had that copy on a
Oh,
slide.
so here's what it looks like on the student's end. If you do the forced copy, would you like to make a copy of dyslexia resources and make a copy? So now I have in my drive, so I can see that I'm logged in as me at cgc.edu. I now have this thing called copy of dyslexia resources. So if I was in Jen's class and this was actually an assignment, she might have me call it McGlasson dyslexia resources or something like that. And then now I have something uniquely named that I could complete and upload in the assignment that she gives.
And I can go in that same, yes. And then so scroll down. So these are the same resources that students have. They're all hyperlinked. The items on the left-hand side are hyperlinked to resources, and then it's a little brief annotated bibliography on the right-hand side. So I turned that my resources slide into an assignment and said, go in and pick 3 out of the 9 to investigate a little bit further and, write a page summary or something like that. In one of the videos, I did a demo of how to force a copy. So you can see after the backslash, the word is copy. Other questions or suggestions, ideas?
Comments, other things you want to know?
I'm Angie from Rio Salado College, and this is awesome. I attended one of the sessions last week.
Oh, good. We're glad to have you back.
Yeah, it was
We like repeat customers.
yeah, it just did a really awesome job of just really making this all relatable and reasonable and all that. Really, what I've used this slide for would be just presentations for the most part, but in educator prep, we need to get on and extend our content to include tutorials for our teachers who are teaching, and that happened quickly and didn't pass as quickly as we thought it was going to, right?
Right.
And so for me, I'm in early childhood, so it's about which development is appropriate and content to be and things like that for my teachers and their students. But I love all of that. Like, I didn't even know about Embed the Slide, so just awesome. I don't have any suggestions. I'm just soaking it all in, but you two did a great job.
Thank you. We're learning new things every week too. I almost wanted to call Mary the other night at midnight and say, get fonts. All you do is go in the help and say, get fonts.
Because we get excited about it. Is that sad that that's my life? Is I get excited about fonts?
Yeah, and from an educator standpoint, it's hard. It's like looking for us to figure out how to teach kindergartners on, well, it's kind of crazy, but I've never done that before. I have lots of experience in the classroom, so it's just trying to figure out what makes sense. But I love this, and just super engaging. And I also think the engagement piece comes with when you're ready for this information, right? So, great job.
Thank you. Another question?
I've seen these slide decks, or not decks, but a slide presentation run automatically. I do in asynchronous, and so I happened to be on some the other day on a Canvas page, and it runs through the whole presentation kind of on its own. Is that individual slide timings, or is that something that is a feature?
Yeah, no, that's an option that you can do. And we have a Canvas course for all the students in our ed program. And so when they open up that Canvas course, I have a scrolling slide deck of announcements. So it's just going to loop around and around and around. And the 5 of us in the program have editing access. So if our advisor has a new update or information, she's going to add to that slide, and it just continually loops. So when you go to publish to the web, and I can, I'm going to make a little note. I'll make a video on it tonight.
I can do a video right this very minute.
Okay, perfect.
If you
tell
me where to go, because I've never done this. I'm learning something.
File.
So I'm in here. I go to File.
Scroll down to Publish to the Web.
Publish to the Web is down here. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we have to click it?
Yep. Okay. See the auto advance right there? You want to embed the slide. So right now you're on link. Go to embed first at the top. So click embed.
Okay.
And then auto advance. How fast do you want that slide to go? So this really is just when they're coming in, it captures their attention. It lets them see the announcements. It's going to scroll. I think if you had content on there that they were supposed to read and go through, it might get frustrating. So really think about how you want to auto advance it. But
yeah, I'd even have somebody else read through them and time it and see how long, if they were a student learning your stuff, how long would they want it to be up?
I like it for announcements because they pop on and it keeps them engaged, and it's something new rather than landing on a static homepage. So you could do the same thing on your homepage, is embed a Google slide deck on the homepage with rotating announcements. So you just pick how long, and then you publish, and it will give you, and start as soon as the player loads. So as soon as they open up into Canvas. And then the second box, check that box. The second one is basically putting it on a loop.
Do you want to put it on loop? Yeah.
So you click that.
So if it was a regular presentation, maybe you wouldn't do that, but I see that for the announcements.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
We're sure. And then you'll get a new embed code, and it's coded in the HTML to loop or run that way.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you, Bartley, because now I learned something new.
I've seen it done this way. I like this. The other one I saw, though, actually let let me stop that slide, play again, and then this isn't the same feature though, is it?
Yes, you can click on the slide and it will stop it.
Okay, so even if I'm not using it for announcements, but I'm using it for a presentation type thing, yeah, I could just let this, I could do, and they just give instruction on pause it when you need to pause it and spend as much time on that slide or in that practice session activity on that page as you need, and then advance it on your own. I mean, I think it's an option to doing a video where I'm clicking through and recording my voiceover.
Yeah, the other thing I would do is since all of our adjuncts would have the same slide deck, I would put it on when students would walk into the classroom for the first couple minutes, and those would just be rotating. But say I really wanted to emphasize the food pantry is open or we're doing food distribution, I would go specifically on that slide, hold it up, and just pause it there and talk to students about that. But it's just anytime you want a rolling banner, what you don't want is students frustrated because it's moving too quickly or they have to keep stopping it. So yeah, for some purposes it's great. Just, think through what am I going to use it for and how would that work?
And it is 3:28, so I know you guys, we have you till 3:30. And if you want to stay longer and ask questions, we're happy to do that. But for right now, I'm just going to hit our last couple of slides. If you have more questions, something that occurs to you later, you have suggestions, you have a great idea you want to come and present with or for us, we've had people do both of those things, then the link for the suggestion box is bit.ly/LOL suggestion box. It is case sensitive, so that LOL is capital, suggestion box is lowercase. So bit.ly/capital LOL suggestion box. Today's slides, you've already seen this one because we gave you this link earlier, but we do hope to see you all in the next session, which will be in 2 weeks, yes? February 9th. But for a copy of today's slides, it's bit.ly/capital LOL hyphen organized with slides, which is not short, but it's, reasonably easy to remember.
The reason we want you to have your own copy of the slides is because this next slide is hyperlinked to every one of our presentations. So this is what just blows my mind about Google Slides as well. So living behind each of these images is a 15 to 20 to 30 minute presentation, 40-minute presentation. The volume of content, because it's cloud-based, really is limited. So if you look on this slide alone, each one of these is an active web link to one of our LOL sessions. So that's why we want you to have the forced copy. So anytime you're doing an assignment, think through, do students need a copy of this, or do they just need to view it, or do they need to edit it?
So those of you who are saying, well, pear deck, what was that? Then you see a little pear here, keeping students engaged and accountable. We talked about waiting rooms. Well, that's not on this one. Oh no, I have to update this slide.
We just did a session for convocation.
Yes,
and
the one that we did 2 weeks ago isn't up here. I think I'm going to have a second slide or start making these really, really small. But what we plan to do next time is working with breakout sessions, taking advantage of that breakout sessions feature within WebEx to do more active learning with your students. So that one really is, today's I feel like getting organized and getting these slideshows done can, partly you're talking about doing it asynchronously. I think that this was just as useful for face-to-face, asynchronous, synchronous. The breakout sessions will definitely be something that's a little more definitely live online focused because.
But the strategies or the activities, if you're going back to class or hybrid,
able to be modified.
Absolutely.
And then resources, should you require them, we pull our images, we pulled today's images from a combination of places, Pixabay and FreePic, both sources for free images, Noun Project for symbols and icons, our Bitmojis, of course, that we have been using, fonts and countdown timers. Usually we just end up doing a search on those. And this was, because you're connecting to it from the previous slide.
So you can have slides that you never actually use in your presentation deck like this one, but this one is hyperlinked to slide 17, the Bloom's taxonomy verbs. So it's just a resource slide.
We are at 3:32 and it's that time where we ask everybody,
turn on your cameras and give us a wave if you don't have your cameras.
Where can I find some more information on an explanation of the bit.ly you were doing
you know what? Bartley, I can put something together for you because I don't know that we have one offhand, but I've just been using a free Bitly account, so I can do some screenshots and send you something.
That'd be cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just, it's one of those things that I'm you just like, hey, she's been using all of this. What is that? I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
You know, and just to learn more, I think, and then find an application. So if there's something out there, I appreciate it.
When I use them face-to-face, I actually been using tinyurl.com for a long time, and I just started using Bitly. But I would use the tinyurl because when I was teaching face-to-face, I didn't have a link I could give them easily or write on the board easily. I'm not going to write a Google link to a survey that's this long. So I would make a small one. So I have like a tinyurl.com/unemployment survey because I could remember that and write it on the board, and they could do it on their phones.
So it's basically a way of shortening the address so that they can get to it, either by memory or without having.
Right. So the site basically says, "Oh, this is what you want: bit.ly.live. We will redirect anybody who goes to bit.ly.live to this long WebEx link."
Oh, cool.
So it's
Okay.
easy.
Any other questions before we go?
Just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
And
for
we
your time
thank
today. Oh,
all of
I
you.
love that, Angie. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey everybody, we got a question today in our LOL session that had to do with how do you shorten those really long URLs that you get. So I decided I will show you while I'm making one for our next LOL session. So I'm here in our next LOL Workshop 13, Active Learning with Breakout Sessions. We have some of the slides started. It doesn't matter with the Google products when you get the link, so I can actually go to the share button. And then down here at the bottom it says Get Link. Notice I have it set, and I almost always have it set. Anyone on the internet with this link can view because our sessions are open. You can always change that to restricting it to the Maricopa Community College District. But I want anyone with a link. I'm going to copy the link, click Done, and then remember I am going to make a forced copy. If you just wanted to share this link, allowing other people to edit it, you would just paste it as is. But I wanted to drop this into a Word doc, so I pasted it here. And the magic is starting with the word edit here at the end. USP, sharing. I don't want any of that. Instead, I want it to say copy. Now I have my link that I will be shortening to share with you. And I've been using Bitly, but you also could use tinyurl, tinyurl.com. Both are free. When you're doing this in tinyurl, you go to the box that says enter a long URL. That's my gigantic Google link. And I can either just say make a tiny URL and it will just make me a much shorter version, or I can try to customize it. So if I were to call it tinyurl.com LOL active learning. And now the challenge, of course, is tinyurl has been around for a while. You can tell by the way the website looks. They've been here for a while. So that means it's kind of hard sometimes to get a link that somebody hasn't already used. When I want to make my URL tiny, I just click the button that says Make Tiny URL, and it created it. tinyurl LOL active learning. If I were to copy this and paste it into another window, then it takes me to the forced copy of this session. So that worked in tinyurl. I've been using Bitly. So here in my Bitly account, notice with tinyurl, you did not have to have an account. With Bitly, you do sign in for an account, but I'm using the free one. All I have to do is hit the create button, paste in that long link from Google, and then I can give it a title. This is for me to remember later when I come back in. I'm going to say that it's live. Live. Active learning. Now, I also go down here, the next box. So I titled it, but the next box is where the magic is for me. Customize the back half. So it's going to be bit.ly/ and they give you random numbers, which is much shorter, so that's better. But if I can possibly come up with something customizable so that I can remember it. I'm going to try for capital LOL active learning and save. And if it already existed, it would have told me and I'd have to try something else, but it said the link has been edited. So I'm going to copy the link. Now I'm going to close this. I want to test it out. And there it is. Easy, either one, tinyurl.com or bit.ly, either one worked, and they will get the audience to the website that you want them to go to. That's it. See you next time in our live online session.